To start with, there are many explanations of why there is a housing crisis in the UK. There are much theories regarding this, including interest rates driving up inflation and etc. But the one main factor that remains after taking all other factors in local and country levels and economies is probably the asset market. So the way that this works is basically, since the wealthy like to park their money into houses like assets, then these react the same way as gold or other assets would react as well. For example, $1 in equity in the 1800s was approximately $2,000 in 2020. And the same goes for houses. For example, in the 1900s, a house would be approximately £1,800, and it is now an average of £270,000. So this clearly shows how the wealthy investing in houses like assets and the real estate market, which is contained in the asset market, has driven up prices incredibly and is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, for the housing crisis.
One of the most damaging symptoms in terms of the impact on the wider macroeconomy would be the stagnating income and staggering property prices. And that led to the fruition of the Community Land Trust model, or the CLT model. And basically what a CLT is land is being held by a community-led organization, and they ensure that the houses that are being built on that land remain affordable indefinitely. For example, let's say there's a house that is on sale for £450,000, but that house with a CLT is now worth £150,000 for the locals living in the area. This is due to the CLT being linked to the local median income. But CLT does have a few trade-offs, such as only being able to resell the property at like a capped appreciation. That is to make sure the property remains affordable even in the future. From this, we have established that the main reason for the affordability gap would be speculation and the inflation of assets. According to the OECD reports, around 40% of all disposable income is going towards housing costs and places a great financial strain on the overall household. With the housing costs so high and continuously rising, it's creating social tensions and widening inequality and creating spatial segregation, where low-income households are being excluded from adequate housing. This is leading to an additional cost of $1.4 billion on the NHS expenditure. And this is due to the health issues that are arising due to poorer living conditions, and also the societal harm and the fiscal strain of homelessness is seeming to have a large impact on the government spending, where they're spending $2.5 billion annually on temporary housing. There seems to be a widening wealth gap between the low-income millennials and the high-income millennials, because the ones with the greater wealth are 4 times more likely to own their own homes, whereas their counterparts, this is largely out of their reach, making it harder for them to reach financial independence and making them feel socially equal to their peers. Since 1980, the number of social housing has decreased by over 1/3, with 1.3 million households in waiting lists, 160,000 children in temporary housing. And this chronic shortage has led to the government paying 64% more to private landlords to support these low income households, costing about £12 billion a year. This has led to more adverse effects on health, on education, on social mobility that is going to last generations, damaging the growth potential of the economy.
In 2017, the government released a white paper titled Fixing Our Broken Housing Market. This document outlined a national plan to increase the number of homes built across the country significantly. The main objective was to make housing more affordable and accessible by speeding up the construction process and opening the market to a wider range of developers, including smaller building firms. It also encouraged the use of modern construction techniques, such as modular homes, to build faster and meet growing demand more efficiently. This strong focus on construction highlights the government's belief that undersupply is one of the main reasons for high housing costs, essentially that there are not enough homes for the number of people who need them, and that imbalance is what continues to drive up both prices and rents. However, increasing supply isn't possible without addressing the planning system. The government recognizes that slow planning procedures and a shortage of available land make it difficult to deliver new housing. The 2035 Planning Reform Working Paper, Reforming Site Thresholds, notes that lengthy Section 106 negotiations can delay housing projects and increase costs, particularly for smaller developers. It also recommends that affordable homes should be built on the same sites as other developments, rather than allowing developers to contribute funds for housing elsewhere. This approach reflects the government's view that planning, complexity, and restrictive land rules are key barriers to solving the housing crisis. The overall goal is to simplify the planning process and release more land for development, ensuring that new homes can be delivered more quickly and efficiently. In addition to increasing supply, the government has also focused on the quality and fairness of existing housing. The Charter for Social Housing Residents, published in 2021, set out measures to improve living conditions, enhance safety, and give tenants a stronger voice. It calls for greater transparency and accountability from landlords and establishes clear standards for the quality and safety of social housing. Another aspect of the plan supports renters who aspire to become homeowners, aligning with the government's broader goal of promoting home ownership. These policies show that the government acknowledges that the housing crisis is not only about the number of homes, but also about their quality, affordability, and the rights of tenants.
Unfortunately, the explanation of the solution is not quite correct, and even the solution is bound to change very little. They say that the only reason we are having the housing crisis is not enough supply, and they want to build more houses. However, they forget about the fact that it's statistically proven that the rich people invest more in assets, including real estate, and they invest more in secondary and any additional houses and in bigger houses, which drives the prices up. And we also see an increase in landlords who are growing their portfolios and trying to buy a lot of houses to make money out of renting, which is also driving the prices up. So what are the issues with the solutions? Firstly, they want to build 1.5 million houses, which is not even enough to keep up with the demand and with the population growth. Secondly, they do not think about council housing at all. There is 1.3 million people on the waiting list for council housing, and these people are not going to be included in this affordable housing solution, because affordable housing is simple, just a real estate which market price is 20% below the market price. And thirdly, by deregulating, which is the way they want to increase the number of houses, they're gonna open exposure for bad quality houses that can be potentially inhabitable, instead of choosing the left solution, which is more about trying to tax the rich for the secondary and any additional houses and build the houses themselves out of this money, which could be potentially a better solution. What they're also trying to do is that they're trying to declassify the green belt areas into gray belt areas, stating that it's just farmlands that are there to prevent the spread of the natural spread of the city, and that are not some idyllic green spaces good for well-being. But the truth is, if we declassify this into gray belts and just start development and building on these, it can have potential risks such as floods and also well-being risk. For example, increased amount of carbon emissions in the air. So what could be also an approach in this is what are the environmental left saying. And what they're saying is that there actually is enough houses for everybody. It's just the distribution is not effective, and by creating more houses we can just create more carbon emissions, which is bad for the environment.
So the 2008 global financial crisis began with a housing bubble, and when that bubble burst, it exposed a system that treated homes not as places to live, but rather as speculative assets to trade. Today, nearly 2 decades later, that same mindset fuels the housing crisis as we know today here in the UK. Analysts say that roots go back even further. So in 1980s, Margaret Thatcher's Right to Buy scheme gave council tenants the chance to purchase their homes. And this was a key moment in Britain's shift towards home ownership and market-based housing. The decades later, that policy has clearly come full circle. According to researcher Chris Hayes, around 780,000 formal council homes are now privately rented, meaning the state often rents back properties it once owned at inflated prices. So experts argue that the solution lies in a more public-led interventionist approach, maybe learning from countries that are trying to treat housing as a social good. In Vienna, for example, a small housing tax funds high-quality city-owned apartments that are rent-controlled and available to a broad range of incomes, therefore protecting residents from market speculation. In Canada, the Housing Accelerator Fund is helping cities modernize planning and build affordable homes faster. And in Japan, the government's focus on building smaller, efficient homes is helping to meet demand while not pushing up prices. So the UK could take inspiration from what these countries are doing and use it in order to come up with one or multiple leftist policies that may help help address the issue. One particular thing the UK is doing in order to address the issue is to build more and more homes. But the problem is that these homes are not necessarily good quality and are not necessarily ready for people to live in them. So this is not addressing the issue. What the UK could do eventually is to free up already empty homes before building new ones, and maybe also offer tax incentives for downsizing, and this could free up larger properties. But some other solutions that experts propose are as radical as reforming or even ending the right to buy. And finally, another possibility is to set rent caps for private tenancies as well, and this will reduce speculation whilst also preventing exploitative rent increases. And as environmental concerns grow, groups like CPRE say that if regeneration occurs, it should be on existing urban areas and not on protected green spaces like the Greenbelt. So the housing crisis won't be stopped by markets alone, and Britain must stop seeing homes as commodities to trade and start seeing them as essential spaces for human life.